Welcome, everybody, to A Recovery Machine. My name's Nathan, and I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Corey. How are you doing, Corey?
Very good, Nathan. How are you?
I'm well. We've got a special guest in today from down in California, I believe. His name is Jared Callahan, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about some of his film projects he's been involved in. How are you doing, Jared?
I'm doing well. It's good to be with y'all.
Thank you. Good
Jared,
to have you here.
You're in, is it Palo Alto?
Yeah, we moved.
Palo Alto.
Well, it's Palo Alto, which is just Silicon Valley, to where all the tech from the world is. But we now run a farm south of Oakland, so across the bay.
Okay.
That sounds nice.
It's pretty nice.
So, Jared, I've got just a few little bullet point facts about you, just to give a little bit of a background on who you are, and then I want to highlight a little bit about the film that you made that we've watched, and then the film within the film, and we'll kind of go from there. But we want to provide a little bit of context to our listeners who may not have seen it, but we encourage everyone to go out and watch your film after this. So, Jared Callahan, you are a pastor and mentor at the Possibility Project, which is an intentional communal living project in California. You're the founder and creative director of People Media Company. You have a master's in spiritual formation. Is it formation?
Mm-hmm.
And a master's of divinity. You're from California, ended up down in Atlanta, Georgia. You were a filmmaker in residence at the Atlanta Film Society. Is that still true?
I was. It's a 3-year shift. Yeah.
Okay. You've worked on a couple of film projects that were featured in the Sundance Film Festival. I'm sure our listeners are familiar with that. And filmmaker of your own films, Janie Makes a Play, which is next on my to-view list. And now, of course, Clean Slate, which is the documentary that we're going to talk about today. And for our listeners, Clean Slate is an exploration of two men's journey through recovery, early recovery, and sustained continued recovery in the state of Georgia, while they are residing in a recovery facility, a faith-based 12-step ministry program. The film highlights two individuals, Cassidy and Josh, as they're on their own journey on making a film. So you are following them as they are making a short film about, well, as it is called, On the Fence. And it explores the sort of the inner turmoil of early recovery, of family conflict, of facing sort of personal pain and torment. As Cassidy and Josh, the filmmakers, are certainly facing their own pain and torment.
Mm-hmm.
And your film, Clean Slate, highlights some relapses, some slips, being removed from facilities as they are working on this project, coming back into the project for Cassidy, and then ultimately getting the footing and diving into the creative process of making On the Fence, getting it released. We learned then that Josh relapsed after the release, or just prior to the release, I should say, of On the Fence. And so it is very much about the creative journey as a benefit in recovery, and then some of the nuances of what it means to face our pain, face our anguish, face what's hurting us, and the reasons that we got there. And it's so much more. And I wanted to, Nathan and I were discussing your project before you came on here, and I had to go away from that movie for a couple of days and really think about what I saw. And for both Nathan and myself, it was not an easy watch, and it was not necessarily like a black and white, concrete, here's what we think about it watch. And my feelings about the documentary have changed a bit over the last few days. And I think they will probably continue to change. And I'm sure you're going to teach us a few things about some of the subtleties. And I want to commend you off the bat for making, as I've gone away from it, a very nuanced, subtle film, a more subtle film than I initially realized it was as I was watching it. So I guess my first question to you is my description there reasonably accurate, or is there anything that you want to add both to your own resume as I stated it, or the film itself?
Wow, thanks so much. That was great. The only update is just we've combined a couple of those things. So my film company has become a nonprofit foundation where now we have a 95-acre farm, which you would think that if you know the Bay Area and San Francisco, even the people here don't know that there would be a farmland available so close
Yeah.
to the city. But we invite artists and young and up and coming artists and diverse artists to come make art on the farm. So they stay, they get farm chores, they care for the animals. We have goats and sheep and chickens. They can walk in the creek, but then they have each other to encourage, but more often critique each other's work and make it better. So we make a lot of movies here and have a lot of people come through to make all kinds of art, but specifically movies are made here on our farm. So it's called Heirloom East Bay, and it's like 18 minutes from the Oakland airport. It's so close to so many things, and yet it feels like it's in the middle of nowhere. So
Wow.
that's where my office is now, and that's where much of my life is spent, is making things here. So no, you nailed it. That's what we're doing. Clean Slate is a lot, and I'm so glad that you picked up on it or that it stayed with you. I feel like one of the greatest insults when you make art, especially a film, is we can spend years on these things. People will watch a film and then go, oh, well, that was okay. What do you want to do for dinner? And it's like, we fail. That's not the point. So there's different ways to make documentaries, and there are movies that are meant to be a spoonful of medicine where you are learning stats and facts and see people in white coats explain things to you. But that's not the film that I wanted this to be. I was hoping, and I came to it, I can tell you, through meeting Cassidy. I just wanted to learn myself about a world that is so deep and so wide that I could never understand all of it, even if you spent your entire life in it. So I just wanted to drill down deep into the mental state, the psyches, and the road of recovery of these two gentlemen. So Josh and Cassidy, I was speaking at the Atlanta Film Festival with a feature film, Janie Makes a Play, and I did a Q&A, and then was on a probably documentary 101 how to make a movie panel. And afterwards, two guys came up to me to pitch me a movie idea, which that never goes well. That's always I'm booked, thanks. But one of them was Cassidy, and I went out to a coffee with him, and I ended up taking 2.5 hours, and I heard his life story, and that guy just had it in him. He had the fight, he had humility, he had a desire to use art for health and healing. I think that becomes a major component of this, that as we've shown the test footage and the movie, as we finalized it to different recovery groups and people in recovery, the overwhelming response was, we feel seen in a way that many Hollywoodization of movies skips over or makes things not real. So we feel seen, but then also, my gosh, so many people have then shared poetry, short stories, song lyrics, paintings, like the way that creativity can be a key component in the process of healing, or a tool in your tool belt as you aim to get healthy and stay sober. It was overwhelming. It was amazing. So I got to know Cassie. He was great. They invited me to come out and see their center. And again, I thought I was going to go for an hour, and 6.5 hours later, I got the whole tour. And I met so many guys in the facility and the work that they were doing, and it was just so much. It's a whole subculture and a world unto itself. And so I started mentoring those guys to make movies. So a year later, the idea for their short film kind of came into existence, and then I realized there was nothing in me that couldn't just film them trying to film it, and that's where the movie began. So yes, it goes ups and downs and ups and downs. The process of it has been a lot, but that's kind of what drew me to it in the first place, was both the personhood of Josh and Cassidy, but then the absolutely unique world of recovery that's mandatory to be there. And that's a unique sliver that has many opinions about what it is and how it does, and if it's effective at all, and if so, how and why. But wow, that's a world where some of the guys didn't want to be there at all. They were court mandated. They could go serve 10 years in prison or serve the 18 months. And then other people were trying to get sober and trying to get healthy and have a balanced life. So that in and of itself was like, as Josh says, there's a reason people in recovery don't make films, because it's impossible. And that turned out to be semi-true.
Yeah. Well, you just beautifully answered our first question there. I wonder though, how long did it take before you made the decision yourself to get involved on that level? Like you saw that they were interested in making films. And I'm guessing I think he told me before, you spent a couple months down there and decided that there was something to be, there was more to be seen, more to be kind of cultivated there.
Yeah, the world of recovery, one of the things that revealed itself to me is just how people are not bullshitting each other. They can, obviously, you can anywhere, but there's something by being in the room that just states something went off the rails. Like it's not as you intended. And just having that be kind of played for you by being somewhere can lead to incredible, genuine relationship. At least it sets it up, because they laugh so hard, but then also they would just cry so hard. And I asked Josh one time, he said, well, if we don't laugh every day, then we'd cry every day. So it's kind of like two sides on the same coin. It was just like the emotions were heightened in every way. And so it meant for a really funny, really close, really serious, really honest group. And I think that as someone who's very much outside of that world, or as a documentary filmmaker, often I enter places holding a camera and then being a fly on the wall or trying to dissolve into the atmosphere. And that was a place where they drew it out of you. They would turn and reference us, me and the cameraman, and they would just talk to us, which made for the opportunity to be, you could choose to get it in or out at that point. It's like, well, I'll be honest too then, like, okay. And that ended up making for relationships that created the fodder for a really good documentary. I mean, it's so much of making a film is trust. And it's not that I need to agree with the people I'm filming. Often the opposite. I go try and film people that are a different gender or religion or age or sexuality than myself, and express themselves differently in the world, so I can learn about the world and how they see the world. And in this place, I learned a lot, and I was quiet often and would answer questions with asked, but it was a great place to go and try and observe, but then get sucked into the inevitable relationships and honesty that they live there.
Almost considered Providence in a way, I suppose, with this one.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's what makes it, that's what we do a lot of research for movies sometimes, and we test out movies. And that's when, that you discern that it shouldn't exist, and that's okay. It's kind of like dating in a relationship, right? The goal of every dating relationship isn't to get married. It's to discern whether the relationship should continue. And sometimes a relationship ending is the right move for one or both parties. And I feel that way too about coming up with a film idea is you're dating, you're discerning. And this was one, like some don't continue. This is one that just continued to take the next step and prove that it was the next right thing to pursue. So,
very interesting.
Jared, we've talked on our show about how non-linear recovery can be. How a part of it is about accepting the bumps in the road and accepting that it's not necessarily A to B, and being okay with that, and then learning from it and picking yourself up and hopefully figuring yourself out a little bit more. And in this. In Clean Slate, it's clear that both Cassidy and Josh are works in progress. It's safe to say that there are some moments where they are really struggling with their mental health, with urges and cravings, with staying on track, where they don't stay on track, where they're just on the edge of conflict, or on the edge of crises, even, you could say.
Yeah.
And so then what came to mind for me was the title of your film, Clean Slate. And I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that. Clean Slate is, to me, evokes the desire for a fresh start, for a new beginning, to be sort of all of the wrongdoings or all of the pain to be washed away, and you start this new life. Well, recovery is much more complicated than that. And so, but I saw that desire, particularly in Cassidy in the film, that he was going to bust his ass to try to get a job and get his car working and get all these things in his life organized and make this on the fence film by hook or by crook, no matter what. And like that would be kind of his fresh start, or the step one of this new path for him. And so in titling the film Clean Slate, I guess, what does that mean for you? And is it highlighting sort of the challenges of that being the goal for individuals?
Yeah, you nailed it on. For them, I feel like there's a real element of hope and you could see it come and go. You were right to say recovery is non-linear, and in so much of an American, for us especially, culture that is so productivity, achiever, consumer driven, right? Which what do you bring and what are you building? And that is just very much, I'm going to literally climb a ladder, right? And that is not how recovery works at all. So for these guys, and I wish I could have known that before getting punched in the face by it, by having the recovery go sideways on me, multiple times. I was just a new friend, let alone a family member, which gave me some grace and humility as we started engaging their family members in the film and then in post since. Clean Slate for that is what I realized is, especially for Cassidy, is that he has to have a hope that today will be different and the ability to bring his whole self today to his health. And if he didn't, then that's when slips would happen, or that's when he would be vulnerable, or that's when he would start cutting himself off from relationships that could be constructive. Or it's a web, right? It's not one thing that keeps you healthy. It's a number of touch points that if at any time you start to trim one or two, other people, a mentor, right, or a community, like other places will hook you and be like, no, we got you. Like, we're staying with you, like an accountability. And I could see that in them in different ways, and I learned them over time. Josh says at one point he's shaving, and he says some people get sober the first time, like my grandpa, but me, this is my 13th or 14th time, and that's got questions about what are you doing in a recovery facilities that you could do it 13 or 14 times, slip and not come to a solution that's prolonging those patterns of health or helping you get tools that work better for you, but. He had not been in this one that long. And it's a system. He was stuck in a system that this is the way to do it, follow the thing. And by the end of filming him, he was over it. He did not want to be there. He says it, I think. He says, I just want to have a regular life, a regular job. He wanted to find a relationship. You can't do that in a strict place that wouldn't allow contact with the opposite sex. It was pretty strict in that one part in particular. So yeah, Clean Slate, you nailed it. It's partly relating to what it means to wipe the slate clean when you're making a movie. You literally wipe it after every take, and if the take went great or terrible, you still erase it and write the next one on. But that's the only way to put the pieces together and make a movie. And so fractioned little bits can all add up into something beautiful, kind of like a mosaic. And I see that in the way that the scenes of their life, for good or for bad, add up to be what it is. And they have to accept that in order to shoot the next scene or live the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's sorry, Corey. That's
no,
I just wanted to say that's a remarkable take for somebody who hasn't experienced, actually going to one of those centers or having a real struggle with drugs or alcohol. That's unusually perceptive. So. Kudos to you for doing the work to get to that level of understanding. And there's a lot of people who are in it and don't make it that far. So
Jared, this isn't one of our planned questions, but your answer there got me thinking back to the film, and it highlights as Cassidy is working on the fence, the film that they're making. And he's talking about his own what movies mean to him, and at the end of the day, he goes back to his home, and he's curled up, sort of semi-prone or side-lying on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket, and for me, like that, it generated such a sort of visceral physiological response, like almost a nausea, in thinking. And Nathan and I were talking about this. I don't ever want to be the person who tries to predict someone else's journey of recovery, right? But like, you see him and you think, oh, like he's alone, he's still isolated, he's going through pain, and you could just sort of see it coming, and then shortly thereafter he ends up relapsing, and the expectation or the hope then can also be can hope without sort of the putting these pieces in place that are going to let you be constructive and proactive and work towards something. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's way to notice that it's dynamic and it's multifaceted, right? Like you could focus on one thing all the time, and at one season for you, it might be the key thing to focus on. But as soon as you start ignoring other areas of your life, those will creep up and get you. So
Mhm.
it's a dynamic game. If that's it's like I'm always aware, and you're always moving, and I could see that. And as soon as you would, Cassie could like lock and focus in on something. Movies with all of us, I mean, can provide a really safe place. And that scene, I love it. I love both that it happened that it was raining and we followed him into a DVD store in Atlanta. They're so great. It's like one of the only DVD stores that still functions. It's independent. They're called Videodrome. They're so supportive. They're the best. They're excited for us to have copies of the movie so they can have it in the store. And they just let us follow them around and talk movies while filming them in the shop. And that was so cool. But then also when he was just on it, the one that gets me is he's on his couch, like you said, and he presses play and you just hear that like the movie pre-roll, the famous ones that we can all do, from memory. And he's alone and it's dark and it's raining and it's not good, but in that moment he is good. And maybe lowercase g good. Like he's okay. He's good. And that movies and stories provide being seen in different ways and escape and feeling like you have friends. And I just think there really is something cathartic to that. And in ways it can be really healthy. And in other ways it's escapism that leads you down paths that aren't healthy. So I've seen it be both in him. And then overall it ends up being his channel for hoping to tell his story and help people if they could see my story. One of the cool things with Cassidy is there's a new app that they're sending films to. It's like Netflix for prison, right? It's like a closed loop for people who are incarcerated.
Oh,
and
wow.
he made a short film a couple weeks ago, and in a week it had 250,000 views.
Whoa.
So he's really honing in on. He sends me scripts, weekly of things that he wants to make still. So it's still providing a channel for all the ups and the downs, of a place for people who need a good story or need to hear a story of hope or redemption. And that can be one piece of hopefully a large team getting them healthy. So that's if there's anything that Cassidy can do, that would be one of them, and he's doing it. So
wow,
great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It leads us into the next question as well. You noted on, I think it's online there on Clean Slate's website. The goals of the film were to increase empathy for people who are going through these type of struggles, and also to highlight how creative outlets can be like you said, either a cathartic or healing, a mode of getting through tough times. You've seen that with Cassidy. What kind of successes have you seen otherwise, as far as the empathy is concerned? Have you seen people who've watched the film and come back with their eyes a little bit more open, or how's that been working?
Oh yeah, man. We thought we came to the phrase of everybody knows someone in recovery or someone who should be, and sometimes it was them. And we thought that people in recovery would resonate, but that's just such a large pie. That in America, 25 million people currently are articulating an addiction in their life. So that's not a small target. And then we realized, well, people who are creative and also on the road of recovery might resonate. And then what we've realized is we've shown it in some places. The people who resonate the most deeply with this movie are friends and family members of people who are lifetime on the road of recovery people. And I think what we're finding, like we showed it at a non-recovery center, 20 test screeners. We fill out a thing. We did a questionnaire, and afterwards someone came up and said, my brother has been struggling with addiction for the last decade. We have not spoken to them. They've been cut out of our family. After watching Josh and Cassidy, I could say for the first time, I can see what's going on in his head. And I realized that I need to forgive my brother. And I'm going to show the film to my parents, because I think it can reconcile our family.
Oh my God.
And we just went, so you liked it? Like what notes are there out of that? Like, but that's the stuff that's come out of it, is this like incredible grace when you've been hurt. I see the hurt side. And when that is bottomless, when that Josh said one time, if I could rob from my grandma, I would, right? So that is a bottomless addiction driving your behavior. And if that ends up leading you to a place where you need to seal off or harden or create space, I now understand how you could get there. But what I'm seeing is there is another side of that, whether it be time and or work and or health and or support for the person that's not you, but there is a place where after enabling ends, then people have come around to a place where they're ready to forgive and move back into a relationship. And that has been what I was unexpected. I did not realize how many of those stories would get shared. And the movie came out Friday. Like this is brand new into the world, but just from testing the film, it has really done beyond what we had hoped it could do.
Wow, that is amazing. I can't imagine how satisfying that must feel just to have that happen once. I mean, you're talking about you're bringing people together on a very important scale, and the timing couldn't be better for it. I mean, this is a time of division in especially your country, but our country as well. And you don't want to see. When I see divisions in family like that, it's very difficult. And I just, hat tip for that for sure. That's incredible work.
The team has been great, but also Josh and Cassidy being so honest, right? I mean, it is hard to let a circle full of people in a meeting into your life. How do you do it with cameras, right? And how do you do it where we were there with him when he was using, like it was not a friendly to yourself time, but he trusted us, and I'm so grateful in the end that they've seen the film, and there are tough moments for both of them. But it ends up being something that they see a greater good in, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. Could you imagine, Corey, somebody following you around with a camera in a treatment center like that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that I suspect that why it's resonated in that way with family members. You act as a very careful observer as the filmmaker of filming Cassidy and Josh, where there are moments where there's some small moments of aggression or moments of frustration, or moments where of self-sabotage, or of just making a choice where you think, if it was your brother or your loved one, you'd want to take him by the shoulders and say, what are you doing?
Take him. Stop it.
And just as the filmmaker, you put us in the position to observe them like that. And where it's sort of interesting metaphor, might not be the right word, but there's a parallel there between real life, art imitating life, of being the observer of people who are making those choices and self-sabotaging, and you can't reach through your TV screen to shake them. And maybe, I don't know, was that intentional, or is that just sort of by virtue of the subject matter?
Well, it kind of happened because my presence there as a mentor had to happen in order for them to get to keep making the film, based on Cassidy's behavior and the recovery center allowing him to come around again. Right. He was on his third strike there when we started filming. So I everything could be handled differently. I understand the way the center responded, because they had 40 or 50 other guys that they're trying to help stay sober. And if someone is going to continue to relapse, you got to say, okay, then you can't be in our space in this time. So I understand that, but man, it was a lot. I think with filming, we decided, one, we were never going to do anything to risk their health. We knew that the possibility of relapse was always on the table, but we were never going to show it in the film. And we decided that from the first day, because we didn't want to ever aid in their voice to recover. I didn't need to help addiction have a louder voice in their head to convince them to do something for camera or something, right? So once they saw that we were going to be with them, but we were going to never do anything to aid their relapse or aid their drug usage, I think that set some ground rules. And I think then it was there was even trust in that we were there for, not that it needed to end happy, because when we showed it some places, it was well, if it's too happy, then it's fake. That's not recovery. There's a real fine line there at the end with how do you end hopeful, but real. And, we test screened that thing. I think the version of the movie that was released was number 17, because in version 16, I added that title card that you referenced about Josh, because it made it real. And if you don't have that information about what happens with Josh, then you could end by saying, oh, he's the Rock. He was good enough. But as soon as you know what he really did, there are 11 places throughout the film that you now can see, if you ever see it again, where you just go, he's telling you the whole time what's going to happen.
Totally.
And that's the addiction speaking. So once that made it more real, and we realized that how we could honor the reality but also answer hope, then it was like, okay, we did it. We only made decisions to support their sobriety and their health, and we didn't conflate anything, and we didn't do anything to Hollywoodize or make a better movie. And if we could do that, then we've held up the most accurate mirror we could, where they could see it and feel seen, but then other people could see it and feel like it was like you said, a glimpse into a world that many people wouldn't have access to, or would choose not to do it in the way that they're trying to do health. So
could you see during filming, I mean, you've probably filmed some scenes many times, but the times you're talking about where, you mentioned looking back now, you can tell it's obvious that trouble was coming. For me and Corey, it was, I mean, we could see it right away. Did that come through for you personally while you were doing it, or was it something you didn't have enough kind of experience with the first time?
Definitely didn't have enough wherewithal or experience to know how much that was coming. Okay. I was aware of the numbers in that center and aware of how often people were relapsing, because there was people around them that were relapsing or not showing up to stuff. And I was like, oh, this is happening. Like, you can find it if you want it. Even as strict as they want to be there, you would find it. And I think that, like you asked me coming into it, I think part of that was realizing in the edit, and then on another film that we released just now, about a friend who dies, and we're aware of his oncoming untimely death, that I had to show up in the film, because otherwise it's calloused. Like, that would be the worst, is if you're watching it as an audience and you don't feel like you have a safe way to be watching it, then it's no longer a laugh, cry, laugh film, because you are a voyeur. You are watching in a way that's not invited. But as soon as the camera person speaks, or I have made myself known, I mean, Clean Slate, I'm in it, but I tried to cut myself out. But in the new one, Sometimes I Shake, I'm in it a lot. And it's a way that you could sit with someone that you didn't ever know, but you're going to spend an hour and a half with them to their death, and you have the freedom to laugh, cry, laugh with him. And I just think that access for me in these two films, I definitely won't do it in every film. I don't like doing it. Filming at the end of Clean Slate was very difficult, because I had written myself into real life, had wrapped me into the role I was in. But right. For both of these films, for Clean Slate and for Sometimes I Shake, it was a necessity for the audience to feel safe.
Huh. Yeah, that's an interesting take too. And I believe that's the correct one. But that'd be experience in filmmaking that would give you that insight.
You can kind of feel it too. And in the edit of especially the newest one, those were both finished during COVID, is that project I wrapped 14 years ago, the filming. And every time I would try and edit it, every 6 months I'd pick it up and try and edit, and I would just cry and then put it down for 6 more months and wait. So until all our other filming got shut down, and I had an editor who worked with me here at the farm for all of COVID, we realized we probably wouldn't have done that right when my friend Dan passed. But give yourself 10 years and start editing again, and you realize, oh, I need to be in it. And I think it made the film way better, because I had the time to heal and grow, and then have a little distance from it. It's different if you put down the cameras yesterday versus give yourself a decade.
Yeah, with any creative process. Yeah.
There's this moment where a rare moment where you were in it, and to be honest, there were times where I wish we saw a little bit more of you, because it really added some interesting moments to the film. And there's this moment where Cassidy you're just starting to they're starting to work on the fence, and Cassidy has to take on the role of being the director, and you come up to him and you say, like, you are the director here, do it, direct. And you're quite firm with him. And what I imagine there is, I can imagine all of Cassidy's sort of self-doubt. I can imagine, I can relate to, having thought processes that hold you back from speaking out, hold you back from being assertive and using your voice. And sometimes you need someone to kind of give you a push there and say, this is it, do it. And you do it sort of as almost like an older brother or a mentor there. And it's a really subtly powerful moment in the movie, because I just got exactly what was going through Cassidy's head without you even saying it. And Cassidy doesn't say what's going through his head. He doesn't have to. It's written on his face.
Yeah, that was really well done. Yeah.
I'm glad you caught that. It was not easy for me to include in the movie. That's part of the hard part about becoming a character in your own film is you also have to be honest with yourself. And I'm not perfect. And I have flaws and things that I misstep, and my tone, I was not nice to him. But also, like you said, I didn't realize the depth of his anxiety, I think, while we were doing it. And he says it like, oh, there's a lot of people here. I don't do good with crowds. But once we were there, he crumbled. Day one, he crumbled. And the fact that the rain gate kept giving him pauses to see that as a positive, where he could like catch his breath for an hour and then try again. But he was getting steamrolled. And so if day two had happened like day one, you couldn't have put him as a co-director. He wasn't doing it. And it took that moment, a couple other moments, and where people just kind of gave it to him. And Josh was really Josh took control. Like, Josh saw what was going on. The whole group knew what was going on, not just with Cassidy, but with everybody. So it was kind of more of an all hands on deck approach than other sets would be. And even the professionals in the Atlanta Film Society that I had hired to come join, that we had hired to the team, they knew and they were helping. So they were encouraging and educating and helping more than you would a non-recovery center crew that you're helping make a film. So the tone was good for him, and he did it. He stepped up day two. I think we didn't talk to him. I didn't talk to him the night between day one and day two, and he was really quiet and processing a lot. But when day two happened and he needed to do it, he did it. And I think that was for him was the real growth. And I think also in creativity, you can make a film by yourself, and at the end there's thousands of names, right? You watch a Marvel movie and there's literally 12 minutes of thousands of names of people. It's the ultimate team project. And so I think that Cassidy figuring out like, we're all supposed to want to be a director because it's sexy or whatever, but that's not maybe Cassidy. Maybe Cassidy is better as a writer, and that serves his personality better, and he can still be a part of the team, but he's not in charge of standing up in front of, like in that moment, 30 people in a stressful scenario, and taking control is not in his skill set. So
yeah, Josh seemed more inclined towards that.
Yeah, he could do it. And also, that's the team. There should be a first assistant director. Directors don't even need to do that. A first assistant director should be able to stand up and command an army and yell at 3,000 hobbits that are running around in New Zealand, because that's their job, right? Like that's not your job. And at a project sometimes small, it's not that small is easier. It's that small as everybody's trying to do everything, and it makes it hard in a different way. So yeah.
So Jared, we wanted to ask you about tough love. This is something that we've talked about on our show, and that we have strong feelings about. That there is in media and in like pop culture and pop psychology of like that's what you do. You take tough love with the addict. You give them the ultimatum, and you, in some cases, you walk away. And we want to sort of speak on general terms about even up here in Canada or in the States, anywhere, rehab facilities where if you slip or if you relapse, you're out. And this can make for sort of a revolving door style of style where people are coming in and out every time they relapse. It can leave people isolated and leave them vulnerable. And given your educational background in divinity, I wonder how that sits with you. And given that you sort of are a part of this communal living project where it is very much about connection and about keeping, including individuals and keeping individuals connected, how does tough love sit with you as sort of a model or as a style that has been adopted within the world of addiction treatment?
Man, I would always hope that love would trump tough love, but I now have just been in even Cassidy's life long enough to see how I think he says in the film that he's realizing that he has bipolar, and then has since been diagnosed. And there's a whole separate conversation about neurodivergent and neurotypical, and how does he like who he is when he's medicated and not, right? That's a whole side of, if you feel like you are being dampened and you are not who you are, that's tough, but noted.
Mhm.
Cassidy, the medicine that ends up helping him find stability the best is also one of the medications he's addicted to. So I see now how in even my relationship with Cassidy, how forgiving love that has allowed behavior to continue that was detrimental to himself wasn't loving. And it felt nice, or it felt like love, or it was the same action that could be interpreted as love to someone not struggling with addiction. It has been love my whole life until age 40, and then I'm doing it with Cassidy, and he's still stealing from me and from this farm, selling my camera equipment and buying drugs with it. And that was 3 years after we finished filming. So when that is my experience with being hospitable and helping him stay and giving a car and a place, a rent, and trying to get him jobs, and like we were doing it, and then through that I realized, oh, that's overreaching. I'm not a social worker. Like, I can be a friend and we can provide a community to make things, but that's two prongs of probably 8 or 10 that you need to find real health. So that's a lot to say. Love that you can love that can be provided, and as the character Pete in their short film that they're making ends up trying to go high, low, guilt, anger, and tries to go every way on a family, that ends up saying for the first time, I will no longer be your enabler. And I think that's what I learned from Josh and Cassidy, is that until they were allowed to hit their low because their enablers were no longer gonna bail them out through love, provided both sanity for their family and also the realization that I'm not going to get healthy for anybody else. They were very particular that the characters and what we were writing would never be trying to get sober for a family member. They just said, until it's for you, it will never happen. And you will find a way around it, or you will dodge it, and it will not be. It can't be for your kids, can't be for a spouse. They just kept cutting out all these side characters. And I realized, oh, like, you, as Cassidy has, you might need to burn every bridge a couple times before you realize that who is going to do what to help you stand. So I'm sorry if that's not the easiest or a clear answer. That's like my personal has been like, I tried this and I've been burned by it, and now burned by it multiple times, and realized for the sanity of the other residents at the farm, of my family, it was like, okay, well, you can no longer steal from me. And how do I still be a support in your web of health?
Yeah, that is an honest and understandable, very understandable answer to that question. And thank you for providing that and not trying to, tell us what we want to hear, or,
You bet.
appreciate that, because me and Corey were talking about it before this recording, and it's not and like you said, love is that's what we're aiming for all the time. But when it comes to addictive behavior, it's so nuanced and it's so individual to individual. I mean, it might not be like, maybe drugs are one of Cassidy's problems, and it could be one amongst many. And if you look at his support system as it is, I mean, you got to take in socioeconomic factors. And by the time you get through everything, you think to yourself, man, how much hope would I have if I
Yeah.
was,
Oh man.
what,
Cassie is a victim. Cassie is a victim of the disease of addiction. And so when I could separate those things and not see the core of who he is as corrupted or evil, or that he, the same thing that drew him to me at the first coffee was that he was a pure, good-hearted, trying to help bring love to the world and care about people. And if you can continue to believe that, no matter what the results of the addiction has driven your behavior to do or be, and if you can still see separate, I think that's a huge gift. And I hope that that's what Clean Slate is able to do. Is it's not easy when it's your person, right? Like that, the person who came up to us at that test screening, if the movie had been about her brother, different emotional connections to your ability to take the story in. But when a story can offer you deep truths, or capital T truth to your own story, but it comes through someone else's life that you didn't know an hour and a half ago, sometimes that's the way that those deep life-changing things can do some work in you or on you, because you kind of got Trojan horsed. Like she didn't probably expect to get it the way she did, and it works if you allow it to do work on you.
Yeah, that's a manner of growth that I think is common in the world of addiction. Like you said, that it's a neat way of putting it, the Trojan horse. But yeah, sometimes that's going to be the only way for some people to get to a certain point, and then something else will come along the line, and everybody's at different kind of spots of understanding, including myself, including Corey. I mean, you want to talk about a complicated subject. It's tough to pin down, the behavior of addiction, how it's can be so dependent on the person. Yeah, it's I guess that's why it's fascinating to me anyway.
Yeah. It's a tragically dynamic topic that is deserving of your life and commitment, and like and continuing to talk about in different ways, because that's the people that we've talked to that have been 20 years sober, just have different elements. Like it's like as someone saw the film last weekend at the theater and was there for a Q&A and shared, and I could see their spouse, their partner, nodding, and the way that I was listening, but I was watching someone loving someone who felt seen. And I just realized that it changes over time, and in every season something else might resonate with you. But I think that's what's special about the human story, is just that there are some that we tell over and over again in different ways, and when they're told, we can relate to them depending on what season we are currently in.
Absolutely. What a great statement. Yeah, that's been very true for me, and you as well, Corey. I think sometimes you're just not ready for the message. But
yeah, and it's as a parent, it also, the movie made me think about love with boundaries. That with a child, you in order to love them effectively and teach them and model good behavior and sort of guide them along, there have to be boundaries there. And if you don't uphold the boundaries with your child, you're going to have a child who runs your home, a 4-year-old who runs your home. And but with an adult who's experiencing addiction, there are who you love. There are so many more complicated feelings at play, and those feelings can make you drop those boundaries, or at least, and that doesn't mean you stop loving them, but when the boundaries come down, are you still loving yourself effectively? Right. Like, and in the film, Josh talks about how one of his great heartaches is that his wife has moved on, and he learns that she's I can't remember if she's remarried or just repartnered, but remarried, and how much that hurts him.
Found out on Facebook. How's that right for modern, right? Oh man.
And you kind of think, well, she's obviously done that. She set the boundary. She moved on. It was obviously raw for Josh, but that you also think, well, there's an individual who probably went through a lot of pain and a lot of getting her boundaries tread upon and disappointments and all that stuff. And you kind of, without even knowing her as a character, I kind of thought, well, she set that boundary and she sort of made the self-loving choice. But it's, holy smokes, complicated one.
So bad. I can't imagine having someone that you, as a miracle as it would be that anybody would marry anybody, that you would allow someone into that circle of trust with you. And then, like he says, she told me if I didn't quit, she'd leave, and the vicious cycle, as he describes it, is just couldn't stop. So that's what I see. Like you mentioned a toddler, and I just learned, my wife sometimes forwards me like Instagram parenting tips, because when you're dealing with a toddler, you're just like, just want to freaking scream. But one of the ones that she said was really helpful was like, my son only has one emotion at a time. There's not layered, there's not nuance. He when he's on something, he's on it. And sometimes I just don't understand why the emotion is so whatever it be, right? Angry or scared or whatever it is. And I see that also in dealing with Josh and Cassidy, not in a pejorative way like, oh, you're a toddler, but in what addiction can do. There was nothing else happening. You're using your same body, you're still dressed the same, you're using all the words you have, but you are doing one thing at this time. And I don't think I know I didn't see that in early relationship. And I don't think I could still see that. I'm not a trained therapist or doctor. I don't know all of the tells, and I'm in a couple years of relationship with these guys. But there's so much more to do. But I see it in what I'm learning as a parent is to just see my son and realize it's not what he's doing is not who he is. And it's not a value statement. It's not a judgment on who you are. You are being controlled by one thing up front, and I will deal with that thing. And so, like you said, I think that the tough love or the boundaries and seeing that with Cassidy, I kind of talked to Cassidy that way by the end, was like, yeah, it's not who I want to be, not how I want to act. But I will kindly talk to your addiction in this moment because I'm not talking to you, the core of you. And that sometimes is the whole of an interaction and gets us to where maybe we get to have another and is more healthy. So,
yeah, we have a term for that. We call it front-loaded thinking. And there is science behind it. And basically what's happening is the same thing that's happening with your toddler, only on a little bit different scale, but it's you're right to say that it's a one way of thinking because that's exactly what's going on in the brain when you hone in on a behavior like that. It's like forming a habit times 100, and your habit becomes a compulsion. It's not impossible for you not to do it, but you feel very motivated to do the behavior.
Right.
So it's interesting comparison with your toddler and how they experience one emotion at a time. I'm going to have to think on that for a little bit.
The one last thing I would add to that is, though, I think, on a personal level, you wouldn't continue to repeat the same enabling behavior or the same pattern of behavior with the individual who's treading on your boundaries or whatever it may be. But what we do see is with our system up here, with our addictions treatment systems, probably in the States too, where it seems to be like it's clearly not working, but we're just going to keep doing the same thing over, and where someone can end up in a facility a dozen times. And my sincere hope is that at some point the facility or the system is saying, we got to look at how we're doing this.
The fact that you're into politics and the way that people are out for their pockets and power and not for health of our people, the way that we've protected corporations that have done billions of dollars of intentional addiction and stuff, like, this has been really shitty for a really long time, and it's not a lot of hope that it's going to turn around quickly. So there are a group of people, some opportunists and some doing some good work, that are using a system that, frankly, the prison industrial complex, they're just full. Like, that is getting offered to people in Georgia when I was there because there are no more beds in prisons. They would rather put them in prison for 10 years, but because there's no beds, they found places that they can plea out. They can go do 18 months and have it erased, and that also is insane. Then you get into employment and what you can do and how people can work for you, and it's kind of slave labor. It's not kind of, it is from slave labor. It is a modified treatment of slave labor in prisons since slavery was abolished in the United States. Like, it is not great. So you to say it's not great is an understatement. and it is not great. So yes, I hope there are places I've seen in post relationship there and turning the film around. There are places that are doing more holistic work. There are places that are partnering people with psychiatrists and job training, and like, there's all these things that I could see were stacked against Cassidy in the film, like you said, economic status, and there's all these things. And it's just like, you couldn't get hired at Starbucks or Taco Bell or Chick-fil-A. Like, get out of here. You're 6 years from a DUI and you couldn't get hired to deliver pizzas in a car by yourself. Like, that is outrageous. So there are some systematic things that need to change in order to provide people who are genuinely trying to get sober the best tools they have to get healthy. And it feels like in some ways people are squeaking through and doing good. People are finding places to do good. People are proponents of other systems and ways of health. And then there are some really big systems that are just not good. And that I've got to do multiple years in one, and to not have it be my life or training, to be able to walk away and be like, whoa, okay, some good, a lot of not good. Thank goodness for anybody who's sober today and hopeful today and has a network today and is trying today. And that's Clean Slate's pocket, small pocket in the corner of the world of recovery right now. It's like, you need to be seen today. Like, maybe that's what it offers,
Yeah.
Oh,
Jared, can you tell our listeners where they can find Clean Slate?
You bet. The cleanslatefilm.com has everything about the film, the short film that they made, the updates about the guys, the cleanslatefilm.com. Our foundation is peoplemedia.com, peoplemedia.com. And that's got links to all our short films for free and our now 3 feature films on there. But that's where we do everything. And then Instagram, I'm Jared_Cal, and People Media is on Instagram. So we try and filter everything through that website and that Instagram so people can find what we make.
Oh, that's great. Absolutely great. Wonderful talking to you, man. Very appreciative of you taking the time to chat with us, and I'm glad we could make it work. And yeah, we'll definitely let you know as soon as we get this one up on air. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man. Lots of great creative things down there.
My pleasure. And thanks for doing what you do and being other corners, other pockets, providing help for people. I'm thankful that the movie exists, and I hope people see it. That's just why we did it. That's why it exists. Right. So yeah, thank you both so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you,
Likewise.
Jared. Likewise.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Take care.
See you soon.
Bye.